All right, so since the last video, I've gone ahead and programmed my button here, or added it and programmed it, and it takes us to this section which I've added, and I'll go over there and give you a second to pause the frames if you need it. So exactly like before, we brought in the fade, brought in a label, brought in the start of the text, and by the time the fade goes away, our text is fully displayed. And then from the grade sheet, let me double click on hand tool so you can see this. I went ahead and pasted in these two bits of text here, and this will give us an opportunity to do a side-by-side comparison of an animated graphic symbol and an animated movie clip. So we're continuing our exploration of animated symbols or multiple timelines, right? Because out on the main stage we have a timeline, and inside these symbols we have a timeline. So just for a quick review, we can see that one type of multiple timeline is the button, and it's not even really an animation that's happening, it's just different states that happen when the mouse is over or when the mouse is done, or defining a hit area that triggers those things. Then we actually made a symbol that has a timeline in it, and that was the craft. And there's really actually no tweening going on here. It's just that this light stays on for 1/2 of a second and goes off for 1/2 of a second. There it is on, there it is off. And that's just happening right here via this layer, right? So just very simple, and the whole idea is that just like on the main timeline, this timeline will continue to loop and play as long as it has a place to hang out on the main timeline. Then we created this fades reuse that is a animated symbol that contains a timeline just like the one we saw before or previous to this. However, this one actually uses classic tweening on it. And always when we classic tween with a symbol. So this symbol actually has a symbol inside of it. And I just changed the stage color to red real quick just so you could get a refresher on what this one does. So here it fades in, right? It's just a rectangle there that, let me command minus out a little bit. It's just a rectangle, starts here, goes to that keyframe, goes to that keyframe, but stays in the exact same place. And all we're doing, like we did on an earlier project, is going from 0 alpha to 100% alpha back down to 0 alpha. And we also created an animated symbol that has a shape tween. So it's morphing from this shape to this shape, and then morphing back to what an exact copy of frame 1. Now, one very important thing to remember is that when you're inside of a symbol and adding a timeline, when you do a shape tween, you can just go ahead and work away, no problem. But when you do a classic tween, you have to remember that before you do a classic tween, the object needs to first become a symbol. And that doesn't go away just because of the fact that you're into a second timeline. So I have an error here, and I can tell because I have tween 1 and tween 2. And you could probably barely see it there because we have this light blue background and then this white guy dancing on here. But I'll almost guarantee you that the problem that I did here was that when I created the runner, I did not first create the graphic. Even though I had imported it from Illustrator, that doesn't automatically make it a symbol. So let's check that out and let's see what I did. So here's how you troubleshoot that thing. And remember, very early on I told you that in my opinion, the most powerful panel in this program is the properties panel, and that's because it lets you do a lot of troubleshooting. And one of the first things you do when something goes wrong, when either your classic tweens aren't working, like you have broken lines in here, or your shape tweens aren't working because of broken lines, first figure out what it is you're trying to tween. So if I click on this, select it, go into properties, it'll tell me what that is that I have selected, and it is a graphic, which is good. That's what you would expect, right? So it doesn't seem like the problem's there. And when I say graphic, I mean that it is a symbol, and I can tell that it is a symbol because it says instance of, and it gives me the symbol name. So now let's move on to this frame. Make sure that that's still the case there. Yep. Instance of runner static. Let's go over to here. Yep. Okay. So where is the problem? Well, first thing I would do is go through the video and see, does this guy show up anywhere else? So I'd preview it in a browser and see, is there any place other than where he's dancing that I maybe accidentally tweened him? Maybe it's on the main timeline. Continue my troubleshooting out until the main timeline. Click on the instance there. And indeed, again, it's a graphic. It's a symbol. I can tell because it's giving me an instance. How about here? Click on them. Again, same story. How about here? Click on them. Graphic, instance of runner. So I'm beginning to think that maybe I don't even really have this used anywhere. So then the next step after I've done that much troubleshooting would be to remove these two, preview the animation again, and see what happens. So no problem when I remove that. When he comes up when he's supposed to, he's there. So my conclusion is that probably when I was trying things out in between recordings, maybe I accidentally made a little tween with them just for experimentation purposes. But you can see how easy it is to do that. Now, how devastating is it if this happens? Well, it comes down to a best way to work, right? And so we really want to keep our library free from any junk that we don't need. In fact, before I say we're done with this video, we're going to go through and we're going to remove even, a couple things that you might think, well, that's not hurt nothing. And in most cases, no. A little bit extra here or there, no problem. But when you're not working the way you should and you're just creating garbage in your library, your animation is not going to run as smooth and as efficient, which is very important on the web. All right, so now that we've got that recap out of the way, let's start to break some new ground. And actually, before we create the movie clip, let's decide what we're going to use for an animated graphic symbol. And I say we just put the runner and have them run in place, and then we'll duplicate that for the movie clip. So since I already have the runner here, I'm going to go ahead and use that layer again. So remember I told you never want to have two animations happening on the same layer, but as long as they're happening at different places on the layer, that's okay. You never want to do, a tween from here to here, in this frame range here, and then on the same layer have a tween going from here to here on the same layer in the same frame range. That's going to cause all kinds of problems. But if something happens later on down the road, that's fine. Now, if you don't want to work this way, by all means, don't do it. But I'm just like to show you alternatives as we go along. So what I'm going to do at this new keyframe that I just created is bring out an instance of the runner. You barely see him there, but we'll bring him out. And probably going to have to make him a little bit smaller. Not only did I make him smaller, I'm also going to give him a tint of red at 100% so that we can clearly see him against this background. Now this may seem like a silly point to make, but you'd be surprised how many times people get this confused when they move on to movie clips. So what I want you to see is that this version here, this instance of the runner, has a place to live right here, just one frame, but if the timeline goes past it, he's gone, right? He only exists for one frame. So I need to extend that out, and just keep in mind that that's also true for an animated movie clip. And that'll obviously make more sense as you start to do them. But anyway, so we get to see him. He's moving along here as long as he has space. Now what I want to do is create a movie clip that contains the exact same stuff. So I'm going to show you first a long way to do that, just because I want you to see how to create an animated movie clip from scratch. So what we're going to do is we're going to first get the content to put in our animated movie clip rather than creating one strictly from scratch. Well, we're still creating it from scratch. We're just going to paste inside of it. So I'm going to go into the library. I'm going to go to the runner, select it here, double click to go inside of it, and then what I want to do is click, shift click, right click, and copy frames. Then I'm going to go back to the main timeline. I'm going to go insert new symbol or command F8, and I'll call this runner. I could call it runner 2. The icon will tell me that it's a movie clip, but I just want to make it real obvious by doing an MC there. So that's our runner movie clip. So the type, we need to select movie clip. Click OK, and then we're going to click here, control click, and we're going to paste frames. So keep in mind, even though I went the lazy way of just pasting the frames in there, anytime you need to create a movie clip from scratch, it's the same as when you did an animated symbol, and you can copy and paste into it just like you did an animated symbol, or you could put your own content, or you could do both. Like I could add something to this. I could add a shape tween to this just by putting a new layer here and putting a shape tween there. I don't want that for this demo. Now we'll go back to the main timeline. We'll bring out an instance of our runner movie clip, and you see how the icon's a little different. It kind of looks like a gear or maybe like a reel of a movie. Anyway, bring a copy out, and we'll do the same two things to it. Make it a little bit smaller, and actually first thing, let me Command Z that, move it back. Let me make sure I've got a place to put an instance of it. So I'll click on runner here to get a starting place in my layers. Click on the new layer and double click and name this runner, and again I'll just do MC to make it stand out from the other one, and we'll put it at the exact same position, and again I'll decrease its size and put a red sheen over the top, or a red tint over the top. Alright, now after I show you what a movie clip can do, you might be asking yourself, well, why in the world would I ever want to use just a regular animated graphic symbol? And I'm going to show you about the only true negative to a movie clip, and that you're experiencing starting right here. They both show up on this frame. When I scrub the playhead, I can see the animated graphic symbol doing its thing. Is there something wrong with the movie clip? The answer is no. It's just, and here's a key thing, this will be one of the quiz questions, is an animated movie clip is independent from the main timeline. So let's just get that down first. So an animated graphic symbol is timeline dependent, meaning that it animates along with the main timeline. An animated movie clip is timeline independent. So let me give you a good example of that here. I'm going to go all the way back to frame number 1, and remember that frame number 1 is stopped. It has this stop action here, and I'm going to bring out an instance on frame number 1 of the runner movie clip, and you can go ahead and do this on yours. In fact, I suggest you do. I need to make this guy a lot smaller though, and I'll keep him white just because I don't want him to be too distracting, because I will leave him here the whole time. Now I'm going to go right to the second frame here after I put the runner in, do an F7, so he only exists for one frame and one frame only. In the end, I did have to put a little bit of a blue tint on him because he's almost invisible at white. But what's going on? The animation is stopped. So tune in next video.